is an interesting way to organize one's travels. So these were some of the masterpieces in Earth geology that Dave liked to show his clients. And he hoped that they would come away with a definite kind of enrichment, more knowledge certainly, a better appreciation for the human lives that have impacted the landscape. He never made much money from his trips, but that never seemed to be his main goal. His ambition was just to share these wonderful places he knew with his clients. I began by saying that Dave Rust and Dee Woolley came to the Grand Canyon perhaps with visions of making some sort of a grand tourism venture out of it. And that didn't happen, but in fact, Dee Woolley probably lost most of his investment. But Dave seems to have learned at the Grand Canyon that you could go beyond the mere enjoyment of scenery, and if you were willing, you could expand your travels into something that brought you more knowledge and personal betterment, in fact. He was an educator, whether he was in the field or in the classroom, and in reading his many letters and those from his clients, I took away the feeling that I too could learn much more in my travels, and have kind of gotten in the habit of taking some of the old geologic works, and more recent ones too, to learn more about the country I'm passing through. So Dave Rust's program didn't get him into the history books until recently, but in this day of overcrowded parks and windshield tourism, I think his approach is perhaps just as relevant. And this was my inspiration in trying to chronicle his life, and perhaps it can be yours as well. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and be glad to sign books afterwards. Yes?
Did he continue to support himself in school teaching, and this was summer job?
Pretty much. He actually became the superintendent of schools in King County, and worked at that for a while. Other odd jobs, he published a newspaper in Kanab. He retired fairly early, though, at the age of 54, and moved up to Provo. And from that point, whatever income he got was from his trips. He guided up until 1941, in the outbreak of World War II. Yes?
I'm curious about the trail that was built down. You say that was done first under Forest Service permits?
That's right.
And then you say that the Park Service took it over in some way. Was there any financial compensation?
The question was the trail built initially under Forest Service permit, and was there compensation after the Park Service took it over? And the answer is no, there wasn't. The Grand Canyon National Park came along in 1919, and before that it was all Forest Service controlled land, even though it was a national monument. And Rust and Woolley tried to get a tourism concession by which they could have continued to use their trail, but they didn't quite work through the channels the right way, and it wasn't granted. It was pretty clear, in fact, that the Park Service wanted a higher grade of tourism outfitter. They wanted lodges, they wanted, ultimately something like Phantom Ranch down at the bottom of the canyon. And a tin can just wasn't going to do it for them. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
When was the name of Phantom Ranch now changed from Rust Camp to Phantom Ranch?
The question was, when did Phantom Ranch get its name instead of Rust's Camp?
Was it called Rust Camp for a while?
It was named Rust's Camp up until about 1913, and then the usage seemed to change to Roosevelt's Camp in honor of the president's visit. And then at some point, probably, I haven't pinned this down exactly, around 1921, I think the camp was disused or dismantled. And one of you canyon history buffs is going to have to tell me when Phantom Ranch was built. Was that 1924 when they started work on that?
Richard?
So there wasn't a great deal of overlap between Phantom Ranch and Rust's Camp. One was kind of on the way out before the other started out. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for coming. Oh, Richard?
This photograph, did you identify that?
This is also in Zion Canyon. I don't know the exact overlook. And while that looks like an enormous river, I believe that's actually the Virgin River in its floodplain. And what you're seeing is the width of the floodplain. Back then, and these old journals bear this out, the river would just roar through there in these enormous floods and scour out the whole channel. And it was later that the Park Service tried to rip-wrap some of that and actually get cottonwood trees growing. Yes?
I was interested in reading the book, how he kind of compiled a top 10 list of these scenic views, and it tended to change over time, I guess, as he thought about different places.
Yes, you're making Wilson, so he borrowed Wilson's 14 points, which of course was a peace plan. And with his clients, they'd always be debating about what are the best scenic overlooks in the whole of the Colorado Plateau. And there were various lists they kept. The one that I mentioned in the book placed Navajo Mountain at the top, and it had quite a few in the Grand Canyon, Torrey, Bright Angel Point, places like that, Dutton Point. But it was kind of an interesting way to debate things with your friends. Yes?
When Russ was an old man, was he satisfied with the way he led his life?
Was he satisfied with the way he led his life? I think he was very proud of what he had accomplished, and especially of rubbing shoulders with all of these educated folks that he guided. But I have heard from family members that he minded not getting more recognition. Folks like Norman Neville's were getting a lot more publicity, and they knew how to get it. Rust really didn't know how to advertise it. It was all word of mouth. And among his clients, they had a very high regard for him, but he just kind of slipped through the cracks in the whole history of things. And that's what I hope to try to correct with my book. Any other questions? Well, thank you again.